Let's get into conversation with Javas. We'll be discussing, of course, the implementation of the 10-point agenda and the question marks, and of course, what the NADCO committee wanted. Like, we'll just thread the whole conversation. Javas is in studio with us. He is the vice chair of the committee for the implementation of NADCO and the 10-point agenda. Good morning, Javas.
Good morning. How are you today?
Good, good. How are you?
Like this.
Like this, like that. All right. As always, before we get into
Nico too.
Nico
At least.
Nico. Before we get into conversation, Jano will share the quote of the day with you. See if it speaks to you or not.
Right. This is a quote by Jesse Jackson, Reverend Jesse Jackson, who passed away yesterday. He once said, "We must not measure greatness from the mansion down, but from the manger up." What do you think he meant?
Well, he was one of the most mystifying philosophical thought leaders that have celebrated over time. And from the quote that you've shared, I think the now deceased Jesse Jackson meant that at times it is not just about what you see. And it's also about that which is beyond that which is seen, and that which is unseen also, at times held by that which is seen, contributes so much to greatness of an individual or even a nation.
Okay. Umesikia hiyo translation.
Nimesikia hiyo.
You landed just at manger.
No, we have not talked about feeding animals. Feeding animals on a trough or on a palatial table. It's about how you look at things.
Yeah.
Okay. This is how.
Quite like that.
In August last year, specifically on the 6th of August, President William Ruto and the late Raila Odinga announced the formation of a 5-member committee tasked with overseeing implementation of a 10-point agenda that they had signed in March. And the members of that committee were to be chaired by Agnes Zani, Fatma Ibrahim is a member, Kevin Carey is a member, Gabriel Oguda, and Javas Bigambo. I assume that the members then appointed Javas as their vice chairperson. So he's here as their vice chair. The secretariats are from UDA and ODM. The committee will be fully funded and facilitated by both UDA and ODM. This is what the statement by the two principals said then. Now, what are the terms of reference? The MOU that they had signed earlier was aiming to address enduring challenges to Kenya's nationhood through the key commitments of 1, implementing the NADCO report, 2, inclusivity in all spheres of public's life, 3, protecting and strengthening devolution, 4, promoting and protecting the livelihoods of the youth, 5, leadership and integrity, 6, the right to peaceful assembly as enshrined under the Constitution, compensation for victims of protests and riots, 7, national debt, 8, fight against corruption, 9, stopping wastage of public resources and promoting government efficiency, 10, protecting and promoting sovereignty of the people, rule of law, and constitutionalism. So, this team that's vice-chaired by Javas Bigambo was supposed to oversight the realization of these 10 issues. Have you heard like any of them has been realized? Just
going over them
anecdotally, just from you, just hearing them.
Tana, you hapo kwa peaceful assembly. I was like, compen what?
Okay.
Compensation, fight corruption, no. I was processing as we went along.
Stopping wastage of public. Let's go through them one by one. Before Javas comes and now he'll tell us actually what we have realized as a committee.
He should
is this. Okay?
Right.
Let's start with full implementation of the NADCO report.
No.
Okay.
That hasn't happened.
2, inclusivity in all spheres of public life.
How do you... Okay.
Yeah, how do you
measure that?
Inclusivity in all spheres of public life.
Tell us how
He'll
to
tell
measure
us.
that.
Protecting and strengthening devolution.
Nairobi is where we draw the line, but okay.
That could be protecting and strengthening devolution. It's perspectives, people.
You said Nairobi is where we draw the line. Okay.
Promoting and protecting the livelihoods of the youth.
Some might argue Nyota is working.
Leadership and integrity.
X. Mariam is like X. Leadership and integrity.
Leadership and integrity. What about leadership and integrity?
Upholding integrity.
Yeah.
And leadership.
Yeah.
Upholding integrity in leadership.
Yeah.
No. No.
Okay. Then the other one is wait, where is this thing disappearing?
Right to peaceful.
Right to peaceful assembly, as per the Constitution, and compensation for victims of protests and riots?
Zero.
We haven't seen that since 2024.
The national debt?
Zero.
Fight against corruption?
Zero.
Stoppage wastage of public resources and promoting government efficiency?
Zero.
No.
Protecting and promoting sovereignty of the people, the rule of law, and constitutionalism?
No.
Zero.
So in total, you've given them 0 out of 10. Mariam, you?
Yeah, maybe one only because it's hard to measure.
Which one?
Inclusivity.
The one that you can't measure.
No, you can't measure. It's the only one where they get
You give them a
point.
mark.
Yes.
But you can't measure it.
You?
I don't see any that has been implemented.
Okay.
But here is the vice chair of the Oversight Committee.
Great. Thank you so much. I have listened and heard you go through all the 10-point agenda issues as itemized in the 10-point in the MOU signed between UD and MOU and ODM. And I've listened and seen how around this table we have got the latter-day doubting Thomases. And let's get into the discussion. When you look at the 10-point agenda issues, these are the threads that weave the fabric of governance in this country. They are issues that supersede the present or immediate interests of UDA and ODM. Actually, they are the path or avenue to strengthening Kenya's prosperity as a nation state. We go even to start with the first one, full implementation of the NADCO report. When you look at the raft of recommendations that were made in the report that was promulgated in 2023, late, and adopted by Parliament in February 2024, one of the recommendations, for instance, was the restructuring and reconstituting of IEBC.
True.
Then there was, of course, you remember the IEBC Amendment Bill. Now we've got the IEBC Amendment Act, which, in fact, when you look at it, provided for amendment or reconstituting the selection panel, the membership composition from 7 to 9, which was done. The selection panel made announcements and vetted IEBC commissioners who are presently in office. IEBC is fully constituted. It has even gone further to conduct by-elections, and we are going to have, I think, other by-elections by the close of February, I think in Isiolo and Kabras in February this year. IEBC itself has even given guidance on issues to do with a preliminary review of boundaries.
Okay.
Now, let me ask,
Javas.
has that been done or not?
Okay, that has been done.
You said nothing has been done, for example.
Let me read.
Second.
Let me read, just for context. When the principals were signing this MOU in March last year, when they wrote here the full implementation of the NADCO report, under that, the priority areas, they said, priority issues in the NADCO process, like the cost of living, youth unemployment, establishing a framework for the implementation of the 2/3 gender rule have been the topics of discussion for far too long and must be actualized now. The principals, when they were signing this, they said, we have the NADCO report, which is a product of Parliament, but there are some areas that we give priority as the principals, which is cost of living, youth unemployment, 2/3 gender
rule.
So let's address those three.
Latif, the legislature derives its authority from the people.
Yes.
And when it adopts any recommendation, we cannot be selective about the recommendations. But let's go to the issues that you've itemized. When you look at matters, for example, to do with the 2/3 gender rule, actually it's been a discussion for far too long. That issue is a constitutional issue. Presently, there is even an active matter in court. You remember after the Maraga pronouncement. And there is the need for Parliament to take actions. Actually, Latif, let me tell you, the NADCO report and its products had about 16 bills recommended for purposes of action by Parliament. As we are speaking today, there are close to 12 bills that are at various stages within Parliament. And some of these challenges actually also emanate from the tussle between the Senate and the National Assembly. And that's why even among the most important bills today is the bicameral relations bill. If you ask me, Latif, and you did, it is actually important that the legislature prioritizes many of these bills and policies, which actually will bring into effect the realization of many of the proposals within the 10-point, within the NADCO report's recommendations. The other thing is this. The two-thirds gender rule has not actually been met at the national level, particularly the National Assembly. If you go to the county assemblies, that has been met. We need sufficient political goodwill. We need parliament to consider legislation. Latif, today, the constitution provides that parliament shall vote on bills. You cannot dictate parliament on how to vote. It's incumbent upon parliament, therefore, to consider these particular bills and pass them, vote on them. So it rests squarely on the shoulders of parliament to pass certain bills that will make some things possible. Let's look at the cost of living, for instance. Up to December 2025, the CBK had reduced the lending rate to 9%. This February, it has been reduced to 8.7%, which enables borrowers to access loans at a lower rate to ensure investment even in business and whatever they want to do. This reduction of the cost of the lending rate and accessing of facilities from banks reduces the cost of living to the extent of commercial interests. When it comes to matters, for example, fertilizer subsidy, has that been done or not? To what extent and how effectively has it contributed to matters of production of food, which we all celebrate? If we are to be true to ourselves, you the doubting Thomases, between 2023 early up to now, can we see a variance in the cost of living? It may not be so major, but can we appreciate that there is drastic reduction in the cost of living? If the answer is yes, then we affirm that on the issue of the cost of living, we have seen a positive movement on the graph.
Wait, are you saying that, so you're saying that everything is on track? Because we went through the 10-point agenda and pushed back, and you're saying, by all accounts, that you feel like there's been significant progress, that the 10-point agenda is actually beginning to reap. Where are you coming from? I'm trying to understand that, because if your answer is some things could be done better, I want to understand if intra-party tensions or anything else is weakening implementation, and go ahead. But where are you coming from?
Janet, let us start by looking at the implementing agencies of the 10-point agenda. The implementers are not ordinary citizens. The implementers are not media. Right? We have got ministries, got state departments, we have got agencies, parastatals, we have got county governments, we have got the judiciary. These are implementers. We have got parliament. These are the implementers. And so the implementation of all the issues within the 10-point agenda rests squarely on the slate of implementers that I have identified. And that is why, at times, it is disturbing and funny when I even hear some governors say that we want full implementation of the 10-point agenda. When you look at protection of devolution, matters of reduction of wastage of public resources at the county level, governors have got a role to play. When it comes to reduction of wastage of resources, when it comes to matters the rule of law, when it comes to issues to do with prioritization of that which must be done for the benefit of the people with respect to provisions in Article 174, Objects of Devolution, and Principles of Devolution, Article 175, governors have got a role to play. County governments are an implementing agency on a couple of these issues. Let's look at, for example, fighting corruption. Just recently, we've had, when you look at the control of budgets reports, when you look at the Auditor General's reports, we have got issues of concern across the 47 county governments. They have been indicted by those reports. We have seen the Public Accounts Committee ventilating and grilling various governors appearing before the park at the Senate. We have also seen issues to do with certain members of the PAC indicted by the Council of Governors on matters of extortionism. That touches not only on the issue of fighting corruption, it also touches on leadership and integrity. All right? When it comes, for example, on matters sovereignty, rule of law, and constitutionalism, you start by looking, for example, at the judiciary. Yesterday, our committee met with the Judicial Service Commission, led by Honorable Martha Koome. And we ventilated on a couple of issues, some of the successes, some of the challenges they are facing that hinder full realization on the rule of law on the part of the judiciary. For example, there is the challenge the judiciary is facing with regard to timely disbursement of funds, and that by the time even they are procuring various contractors or service providers, due to late disbursements, you find that a financial year has ended, and that money then is reverted.
So just to answer Jano's question, what are you saying? Are you saying that these 10 points have been implemented, are largely being implemented? So let's do the CBE. Exceeding expectation. Meeting expectation.
Right.
What's the other?
Below
expectations.
Yeah.
If objectivity was to be my second name, I would say that we are getting to meet expectations. We are meeting expectations.
Getting to or meeting?
We are meeting expectations because of the actions of the various implementing agencies. However, a lot more needs to be done at various levels.
Okay.
And this that needs to be done is dependent not just on goodwill. And that's why our committee will make a raft of critical recommendations, not just because of the 7th March deadline, but also because of the future of the country that we need to safeguard. When President William Ruto, for example, is talking about moving Kenya from third world to first world within our lifetime, the issue about moving Kenya from third world to first world is predicated on a number of issues, the software and the hardware.
Okay.
When you look at, for example, the software, these governance issues are very important in railroading the development of Kenya into the world that we want.
We'll go into a break shortly, and Mariam will come and, she gave you 0, all right? I think I also give you 0. Well, not you, basically. I'm saying the implementation of the 10-point agenda, 0 out of 10.
Let me
Jano
ask.
said 1 out of 10. Hold on, we are coming out of the break. As we go into the break, please remember, your scope and the job that you are given by these two principles was not to audit, was to oversee. Today, 6th August 2025, the principals announced the formation of a 5-member committee tasked with overseeing the implementation of the 10-point agenda. Overseeing, not to audit and report back, not to recommend, to oversee. That means you're in charge of making sure that this thing happens.
Correct.
It's 27 minutes after 7. Javas Bigambo is the vice chairperson of that committee that was formed by President President William Ruto, and the late Raila Odinga to oversee the implementation of the 10-point agenda, the MOU that they had signed in March. We'll be back in a moment.
Number.
Right, just before we get back into conversation, the Kikombe says NADCO appears to be on track, except they promised us Eliud Kipchoge and they're delivering a crawling baby. The mouth ran 42 kilometers, but the feet are yet to leave the compound, Donge. Jeremy Muthuma says every Kenyan would like to live in Kenya, where of Javas, where government is meeting people's expectations and everything is going smoothly. G. Kimando, are we referring to the same document? That's what he's saying as he's listening and watching. Kibaki would have said, hawa wanapaswa kutwangwa makofi. Honestly, they joke too much. Sorry. I don't know why it came so automatically. I could have just read it.
No, you shouldn't have.
Just read it
Thank
as it
you
is.
There's
so
no
much.
way you should have just read it. Surely,
Yeah.
how?
Would
Right.
do it again, Aki?
I will try. Hawa wanapaswa kutwangwa makofi. Apologies.
It's like he's in the room with us.
It's like he's in the room. But
Wait.
yes, Javas, by all accounts, a lot of people are like, are we referring to the same document? Are we referring to the same milestones? Are we actually moving somewhere? Eric, just before the break, said in summary of what Janet asked, are we meeting? Are we below? You said we're meeting expectations, but I don't know, the jury is out. Mariam, you wanted to come in.
Let's stick with the youth unemployment, youth livelihoods, that. The 2/3 gender rule, let's start with that actually, and then we can expand. And the cost of living. I was looking through trying to find data. Of course, 2025 is just the other year, so data is not super concrete. But as of like World Bank reports talked about unemployment being at about 12%. But from the preliminary data for 2020, that was 2023, sorry, 2025, it's looking at 11.9%. So flat, if we're being honest. Not much of a change. How is that a significant change in youth unemployment, given that, again, every year we have almost 1 million graduates coming into the job market, trying to find meaningful work. And by the way, when we talk about unemployment data, that's just raw like unemployment. We still have a big problem of underemployment, which we don't even target. So this is one of, again, your mandates. Looking at the cost of living, something we've discussed on the show over and over again is that the macros have been stable. True. Cannot lie. Inflation has gone down. Bank rates have gone down. CBK has been pushing, its rate down. Yeah, tick, tick, tick. How does it feel in your pocket? Not very different, to be quite honest. Looking at even the proposals by Treasury for this now coming year to reduce taxes on certain income bands, especially those under 30,000 shillings, now go to 25% as opposed to 30. Sounds nice until you realize you will still be taking home less effectively than you were before 2022, even if the tax rate is reduced to 25%. So macros, fantastic. For an economist, for anyone reading a paper, it's like things are doing great. How does it feel in your pocket? Same. That gender rule, you've said county assemblies, have managed to essentially entrench this 2/3 gender rule using their party lists. Expensive, bloated, against the spirit of the Constitution. If the idea was, this is my interpretation, it was to have elected, persons be of not more than 2/3 of the same gender elected. So yeah, nimeenda hizo tatu, you tell me. That's my pushback against saying that you've implemented anything on those three.
Mariam, you cut your coat according to your size. Different countries have got different approaches and metrics for meeting some of the variables that are itemized in the 10-point agenda. Let's look at the 2/3 gender rule, for instance. You go to Uganda, there are certain electoral zones that are demarcated specifically for women. In Kenya, do you think that can work? It can't. It will go against the spirit and the provisions of Article 27, sub-Article 4 of the Constitution, the issue of discrimination of those electoral areas on the basis of gender. If we're to set some constituencies to be just for women, to be elected as women. And what we may need to rethink is our approach to the proposal on meeting the 2/3 gender rule. And as I was talking about or having deliberations with the JC yesterday, Justice Njoki Ndung'u of the Supreme Court indicated that perhaps just as we have the equalization fund, it would have been proper for us to have a provision in the Constitution with a sunset clause on how to have the co-option of women to meet up that difference after elections on the 2/3 gender rule. But you see, that's just a proposal. It is not material right now.
When you look NADCO propose, your remit is NADCO. What has NADCO proposed on the issue of gender?
I'll tell you this.
What's the fix? Because as it stands, it's a straight zero.
Yes. On the 2/3 gender rule, factually speaking, that one is still unmet. On the 2/3 gender rule. You see, we have to be factual. It's not a question of just giving scores for the sake of it. That's why when I said we are meeting expectations, there are those that have been met, then factually there are those that really need to be given much more attention and political goodwill, and rethinking even by ourselves. And that's why, even as our committee is going around the counties to engage with citizens, with county leaders, governors, leaders of the county assembly, etc., it's also for us to, beyond establishing what the people are seeing as being met, what is it that can be done better to meet all these 10-point agenda issues? You asked about, for example, the issue of minorities, the issue of inclusion, which is one of the 10-point agenda issues. We've got now the new PW, Persons with Disability Act, which necessitates that, for instance, in all public spaces and even institutions and even private, we need to have at least 5% of persons of disability among employees here at NTV, Nation Media Group.
Should we?
I don't know, for example, whether you are meeting that, but generally, we have got a new law in place.
Should we conflate that as a success with NADCO and it being a success in NADCO, or it just happened to be something that was being legislated in Parliament at the same time that NADCO is trying to be implemented, and now it's like, okay, let's take the win.
It is one of the successes, as a matter of fact, and amongst many others.
Of the 10 points.
Because the journey of inclusion is not something that will end within 6 months of the mandate of the committee. This is something that must go on perpetually as long as we live as a country.
Agreed.
For example, when it comes to the rule of law, it cannot...
You're not understanding my question. This law was pushed, went through the various stages of Parliament, has been read, has been amended, that was not a product of NADCO though. It was legislation happening via, for example, Senator Sige. It was a lawmaking
Mariam, I will tell you this. We cannot start cherry picking and say that now this particular provision should have started immediately after the MOU was signed. Some things, for example, as a matter of fact, gel in within the very gamut of the 10-point agenda.
Okay.
And we cannot say, let us isolate this.
So not as a result of, but somehow are...
Consequentially.
Consequentially.
Okay.
Yes.
I think the idea of the 10 points, even at the point when the principals were signing, it is recognizing that these are the pain points. They identified these are the pain points of the country and saying that we need to work together to address these pain points. NADCO is just one of the 10.
One of the 10. Let me give you an example.
The NADCO report is implementing the NADCO report.
Yes.
I don't know why they brought it here, but let's just say full implementation of the NADCO report is one. The other 9 includes inclusivity,
war on corruption,
war on corruption, and so on.
Let's go.
Very open-ended.
Now, Latif, let me give you the example.
We didn't finish with cost of living.
Let me get the ball to the net on the issue of war on corruption. Since the advent of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, we have had provisions on leadership and integrity in the Constitution. We have had ethics and anti-corruption commission. Now, we've got even the asset recovery agency that has been in place. Today, as we're speaking, when you look at even the concerted efforts to fight corruption in this country, including even the just recently signed July 30th, 2025, the Conflict of Interest Act, which repeals effectively the Public Officer Ethics Act, enhances the war on graft. Let's face it, up to now, jointly between EACC and ARA, Asset Recovery Agency, we have seen that, for example, just in the last financial year, after, for example, if you want to speak to the period since the MOU, over 3.5 billion shillings has been recovered in cash from former and even public officers on matters graft. Today, a number of public officers have been indicted, have been hauled into the courts in the greater effort to fight corruption. President William Ruto himself has publicly and consistently and vehemently spoken against corruption. When we had on 18th of August 2025, the Joint Parliamentary Group meeting at KCB, he even decried some parliamentarians who took bribes so as to pass the Money Laundering Act or bill before he ascended into it into an act. Just about a week or so ago, we've had the Council of Governors decrying extortionism from among members of the Public Accounts Committee of the Senate. Now, as a matter of fact, the war on corruption will not be met successfully merely by having pieces of legislation and policies and institutions. This war must be also made personal. There is the legitimate expectation that, for example, institutions and entities such as the Public Accounts Committee, which oversees the executive at the national and the county level, must not engage in graft. Yet, we have found a number of the members indicted. My point is this. We need to do much more at various levels, including individual level, for example, to fight corruption.
Of course.
When it comes to wastage of public resources, after the Gen Z revolt in 2024, you saw initially we used to have a budgetary allocation to the office of the First Lady, Second Lady, and then the spouse of the Prime Cabinet Secretary. All that has been removed. It was removed. Today, there is a 12-month freeze on purchase of new vehicles by public entities, except for security services. Now, all these are measures toward prudent utility of public funds.
Okay.
Yes.
Just hold that. Let's begin. Corruption. We've talked about the Asset Recovery Agency recovering 3.5 billion shillings. A few days ago, the Daily Nation headline had just billions. Billions in terms of scandals, corruption scandals. The first one that comes to mind is 11 billion shillings lost in Shah because of ghost facilities. I think it was to ghost facilities, if I'm not wrong. That's 11 billion shillings. But the entire front page spread was just how much we are losing to corruption and continue to lose. So 3.5 billion shillings is a lot of money, but it becomes a drop in the ocean of like the corruption cesspool. You've talked about efficiencies, like not paying certain officers that were paid before and doing away with them. Fantastic, except State House has already spent 112% of its budget in the first quarter, if I'm not wrong. I hope I'm getting that number right. So again, where is the efficiency in that? It's again, your efficiencies in cutting spending in one place are overruled, overdone, over whatever by all other government inefficiencies. Corruption can be fought by the Asset Recovery Agency and they recover 3.5 billion. But when you have an entire front page of just billions and billions and billions of shillings lost, it still amounts to a zero as far as the implementation of these agendas.
At the face value of it, you may seem to be right. But you see, we cannot fix the nation without fixing the truth. When it comes to the issue, for example, of the 11 billion shillings share-related loss, you may recall that that statement itself, that proclamation was made by CS Adan Duale himself, saying that initially this has been the extent of the loss, and now with various mechanisms being put in place, the keenness is to ensure that there is no fraudulent claim by various service providers. And I think that's the direction we need to move.
Lost is still lost. I hear you. It's good that it came from the CS as opposed to coming from, I don't know, an expose or wherever else. But the money is still the money. There's still 11 billion shillings. We can still go, through all of them. The
I just wanted to point out here, and Javas, it's important that you address it from that angle as you address this, that the 10-point agenda was not starting issues that were new to the country in March 2025. It was a realization, a supposed realization by the two national leaders that these are the main issues that are affecting the country right now, and that we need to dedicate our efforts on these particular 10 issues and work together collaboratively and all to address them, right? So the expectation would be that, yes, we will not have eradicated corruption a year down the road, okay? But because of our recommitment, because that's what they say, they are rededicating and recommitting themselves, we shall see a significant change in the graph. In terms of effort activity, it shall shoot up.
Right.
Effort activity of addressing, misappropriation of public funds, we shall see that there's a difference because it's coming from the top, from the very top. When the public sits back and looks at the period February 2025 and the period February 2026, one is period before MOU, the other one is period after MOU, exactly a year. Do you see a significant change in effort, in dedication, in movement toward addressing these 10 points? I think that's where, when we say zero, it's zero based on that. It's based on this thing could have happened anyway, MOU or not.
Now,
the Asset Recovery
let's face
Agency,
it, Latif.
the Asset Recovery Agency would have recovered money anyway. The EACC would have taken these cases anyway, MOU or not. Is there anything that we can say because of the MOU?
Thank you so much. You speak well. In fact, there are those who, like you, may have thought that the implementation of the 10-point agenda was merely phantasmagorical. But
what does that mean?
I know.
I mean, merely a fact of imagination. and not materially happening.
It was functions. Magorico.
Phantasmagorical.
That is it.
Now, when it comes, for example, to protection of devolution, you've seen, on the basis, for example, of Article 6 of Article 2 of the Constitution, that these two levels of government are distinct, but should exist and cooperate in matters of running their affairs and responsibilities. You've seen, for example, we've had white elephants in various county governments. On the point of protection of devolution, we've seen, for example, President William Ruto commit to aid to the completion of the Level 6 hospital, the Kakamega County Referral Hospital, that had been commenced by Governor Oparanya, as he then was, and had remained and finished, including the Kakamega Stadium. Look at Jaramogi Oginga Odinga teaching at Referral Hospital. We have seen that commitment. Look at, for example, the issue. Now, factually, Janet, Latif, Mariam, financial year 2025-2026, we saw an increase in shareable revenue allocation to county governments grow from 387 billion to 415 billion shillings. The commitment this year is possibly to realize it to 450 billion shillings, allocation to county governments. But as these allocations are done, we expect much and better from county governors. On the basis of Public Finance Management Act and attendant regulations, wastage of public resources is something that we frown upon. Look at what has been reported in the northern part of Kenya. It is something that, and we appreciate even the work of the Public Accounts
Javas,
Committee.
can I come in and ask something, which I think Mariam and Eric may have alluded to? Let's still go back to this. The MOU that was signed between President Ruto and the late Raila Odinga underpins this agenda. The late Prime Minister is now late. It feels like the political commitment has weakened. Because you could sit here and talk about listing this and that, but the sense is, maybe, that's what I'm throwing in, is that probably there's a part of this that went with him, that went with the late Raila Odinga, and that will be difficult to recover because there doesn't seem to be a sort of streamlined political will or commitment. Had he been alive, maybe. I don't know. There could have been that.
Even before he left us.
I get you.
I'm going from granular to big again.
There was a morbid fear that the MOU would collapse upon the demise of the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. But look, there were two principles. His Excellency President William Ruto and now the deceased Honorable Raila Odinga. But remember that this MOU was not just between President William Ruto and Raila Odinga. It was between the party UDA and the party ODM, which parties are extant hitherto. So it is about these parties. They are institutions. Remember, political parties are institutions. So the MOU also is between the institutions. Now, President William Ruto loved and respected Honorable Raila Odinga so much. As a matter of fact, they even called themselves brothers. He called him brother. As a matter of fact, Janet, as we're speaking this moment, the two parties are working together, and they donated the joint secretaries to the committee, the Co-Intent Committee. Honorable Nicodemus Bore, the ED of UDA, Honorable Odorongwen, the ED of ODM, who are joint secretaries to the committee. These parties are facilitating the work of this committee, not the exchequer. And so as a matter of fact, that underscores the commitment of President William Ruto to the implementation of the 10-point agenda, even with the death of Raila Odinga. And so the commitment of President William Ruto cannot be gainsaid on the issue of the full realization of the implementation of the 10-point agenda.
You know, if we just want to quote the late Raila Odinga, I say that even when he was alive, this thing was not being implemented. Okay, and I'll give you quotations. For example, during the budget making process, Raila was vehemently pushing for higher allocation to devolution. And he was using the figure that has been prepared by experts whom we pay every month, called the Commissioners on Revenue Allocation, who have come up with a figure. Then, in the negotiations, the national government always pushes back below that figure. Senate tries to push above what the national government is pushing. Governors try to push what even above the Senate is pushing, right? The national government always ends up giving the lower figure as its proposal. Raila was pushing for much more. So even when we say that it was more that was given to the devolution last year, it wasn't what the mathematicians at the CRA had told us. It wasn't what the Council of Governors had presented before, their summit. It's not what has been agreed upon. So the realization of more funding going to devolution, not met. The realization of unbundling of functions and then funding those functions is still a conversation that still goes on to date.
And that's why we've got IGTRC.
And when we come back now and start saying, we are giving money, but also they need to be accountable for the money, that's not your job as national government. Your job as national government is be accountable for the money of national government.
Let me correct you.
The job of the governor...
The national government does not give money to county governments.
It doesn't.
It's the national treasury that disburses funds to county governments.
Yes. And that's the point. The point is that the national government should not be coming back to say, but we are giving them money, they should account for the money. No. National government should account for its trillions. Counties should account for their measly 400 and something billions.
15%.
Not 15, let's just say measly 400 and something billions. It's that. So when you hear this whole conversation about, but accountability, but you see, you should look at now Northeastern, what's happening now.
We cannot downgrade accountability
that
because
is splitting hairs. And that's
values
not the
of
job
good governance in the Constitution, accountability and transparency is one of them.
It is.
I remember when we were growing up in those former years, when schools would close and we were given the report card, it was always written sometimes, there is room for improvement. As I'm sitting here, there is also the chance to pull the socks from around the anklets towards the knee. And so when it comes to the issue of progressive of allocation, increased allocation of shareable revenue to county governments, we have seen progressive and gradual increase. And I think we're getting there compared to where we were in former years. And Latif, we have got to appreciate this. We do not have to be persons who, even when you are seeing things working and moving, we doubt it. Now, look at the issue of managing public debt. Today, President William Ruto has railroaded the infrastructure fund.
Let me read what the MOU reads on the issue of national debt. An urgent audit must be conducted of how much has been borrowed in the past and how it has been used. Going forward, we must stop the ballooning of the national debt and ensure accountability for future borrowing. Lastly, we must ensure that money borrowed is used in a manner that grants an equitable benefit to all Kenyans in every region of the country, since payments are made by all from taxes regardless of their locations.
Correct.
Point number one, an urgent audit must be conducted of the past borrowings and how they've been utilized. Has that happened?
Now, President William Ruto established a task force which has been injuncted by the courts on the issue of the auditing of public debt. It has been injuncted. Under the basis of the rule of law, the president cannot engage in contempt of court to proceed with that when the matter has been injuncted by the courts.
That happened before the MOU was signed.
Secondly,
that happened before the MOU was signed.
On the issue of...
See, Javas, just answer simple. The attempt by the president to form something and the stopping of it by court happened in 2024. In 2025, when they signed this, they said an urgent audit must be conducted. Right?
Correct.
Courts did not say do not audit public debt. Courts said the method in which you have proposed to audit public debt needs to be reviewed. Has that been reviewed?
Well, and
has an urgent audit been conducted? Yes, no.
And we're at
presently, that process is to commence.
Okay. We must stop the ballooning of national debt. Has that?
Correct.
Yes,
and that's why President William Ruto has got the railroaded the infrastructure fund and the sovereign
we borrow
fund.
outside the books.
Okay.
No, but let's face it.
We're at time.
We must appreciate efforts that are being made. As a matter of fact, Latif,
there's no effort. That's what we've told
look
you.
Today, in terms of infrastructure
we
development,
must appreciate
look at across
when
the country.
there's no effort.
Latif, do you want to tell me that across the country you're not seeing infrastructure development? All the way from the northern part of Kenya to the western, even to the coastal region? We are seeing roads, we are seeing bridges, we are seeing the ports.
As we wind up, Music is Life is saying people who cannot even implement the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, sasa ndio mnatarajia wa implement a mere MOU. When your body still hurts but the doctor insists that it doesn't, that's NADCO at the moment. Daktari ongeza dozi ya dawa, see to diagnose every visit. Yeah, that's the kikombe. Okay. So I don't think Eric is alone in his sentiments. Many still feel that
Even Javas is there, but
okay, he just can't say it. Well, let's thank him. That's Javas Bigambo, who's been with us in studio. We've been having a conversation around the NADCO report. There we have it. The Vice Chair Committee of Implementation of NADCO and 10-point agenda. In the next hour, we talk about fixing Nairobi the route away. We speak to Godfrey Akumali.
inside the cooperation agreements.
Cooperation agreement.